the future of the Justice Department on the line. Let's bring in senior investigative reporter Kara Lenink, MS Now senior White House reporter Vaughn Hilliard, MS Now senior congressional reporter Ali Vitale is on Capitol Hill, and MS Now legal analyst and former acting assistant AG for national security Mary McCord. What a power panel. Vaughn, I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. The president would rather torpedo his own nominees' confirmation than put in writing that the so-called anti-weaponization fund is dead.
That's accurate. That's what's just happened. Those were the demands of John Cornyn and Thom Tillis, and the President of the United States and the Department of Justice were unwilling to affirm to them that they were willing to make that concession. We're talking about a $1.76 billion slush fund. They call it anti-weaponization fund, but essentially $1.76 billion that they would be able to dole out to people that they claim were unfairly treated by past Department of Justices and by past, you could even say, attorneys general, or, you could go down to Fulton County. You could talk about folks that were involved in the J6 insurrection. The list goes on. And the President of the United States wanted that slush fund. And back in May, the Department of Justice announced as part of its settlement with the IRS that they were going to get it. But the second part of it is that acting capacity, too. And I know everybody can go more into the technicalities of the law, but I was going back to some old notes here, Alicia, back in 2024, when he was running for president. Donald Trump Jr. was urging his dad to go the route of acting attorney general. He was very specific, saying that, quote, it would send that shot across the bow or the swamp. But also people like Mike Davis and Jeffrey Clark, they promoted the concept of using acting attorney generals, saying they would be more efficient. And Trump himself, he said, as you know, I like acting. It gives you greater flexibility. Back in 2019, Chad Wolf was his acting DHS secretary, ended up serving into 2021 despite the GAO and a court having found him to be serving unconstitutionally. And so we actually thought this was going to be happening sooner than later. But Donald Trump, seemingly now with Republican opposition up on Capitol Hill, he's turning to the exact tactic, using somebody in acting capacity, that he and his team and his legal allies around him during the 2024 campaign were setting him up to do. And it seems like he's just sort of saying, go out with normal standard form of governance. We're going to do this our own way.
Okay, so let's put a pin in that because I want to game out what that might actually look like. But I am not done yet, Ali Vitale, with the fact that just a few hours ago, you had senators on the Hill, Senator Cornyn in particular, trying almost to shield the president from being the one who had to take responsibility for this. Let's listen to what the senator told you and then talk about it on the other side.
Every time I think we're getting close to a resolution, somebody throws a wrench into the work. So we this morning it looks like we're no closer than we were before.
If they're not able to give you the narrower look at that IRS immunity deal, does that mean you're willing to vote no?
I think I am prepared to vote no, but I do think I owe it to my constituents and to Mr. Blanche to try to negotiate in good faith.
Have you talked to the president?
No.
No. Would a call from him help?
Yeah, he could fix this in a minute, but I don't know who he's listening to or whether he's motivated to do that.
Okay, one, I just got to say, Ali Vitale, I love seeing you in your natural habitat. Two, amazing to me that the senator says someone keeps throwing a wrench into this, tries to not point fingers at the president. Trump then goes on his own social media platforms and says, let them know it was me. What do you make of what's happening right now?
I actually thought it was interesting the way that Tillis began that interview saying, well, it's someone. And then he actually directly said the president is the person who could fix this. And so whether or not he thinks that it's Trump's lack of motivation to fix it or that he's listening to the wrong people, he did directly lay it at the feet of President Trump in a way that I had not heard previously, either from Cornyn or from Tillis. And so I do think that's notable because it directly draws the line for folks between the idea that this is a negotiation for Todd Blanche to ultimately shut down this settlement and then get the job of full-time attorney general. But it is very much something where Trump was always indirectly looming over it, and now Cornyn has directly attached him. And so I think that that's notable and instructive. A few minutes after talking to Senator Cornyn, I talked to Senator Tillis, and what both of them say is that the hangup right now is that apparently DOJ, whether it's Blanche or others negotiating around him, don't want to actually put this in writing. And of course, putting it in writing is the whole point, and it's so that someone else can't come back and revive it. Now, what Trump is doing is he's banking on partly what Vaughn is talking about, which is this idea that he can put people well outside the Senate confirmable mainstream into some of these cabinet positions if he just skips the process altogether. And certainly, given the ways that he's treated the Senate and the House over the course of the last year and a half, I could see us getting there pretty soon. At the same time, though, he's also banking on using the Senate calendar and saying, OK, if Cornyn and Tillis want to have a problem with this right now, I can keep Todd Blanche exactly where he is. I'll just keep him as acting. And when they're gone at the start of the next Congress, I will bring back Todd Blanche's nomination. He could do that. And that is him using the calendar to his advantage. And I think the question that it all begs is, why is he so loath to give up on this fund, which is not just the 1776 slush fund, but also that IRS immunity deal that basically means he and his family won't have to worry about audits or anything from the IRS. And I think that is really the central pinpoint. As someone who's covered him for the last 10 years, the tax returns were always central to this, not giving them up, not showing them. And then, of course, talking about how not paying taxes made him smart. That's something he always used to say.
You know, one of the things that you are missing, Ali, as you stand in the rotunda and I get to be here on set with Carol and with Vaughn, is that Carol treated all of your commentary like pop-up video, where as you were speaking, she's like, that's exactly right. That is the question. Answer Ali's question for me. Why is he so loath to give this up?
Well, again, I got to props to Ali. When I saw her interview Cornyn and get that information, like in real time, amazing, great reporting. So proud of you. But you're also right, Ali. It's definitely the taxes. That is the obsession. I have to say something that I know is going to ring in Mary's ears in a different way than for everybody else. But like, the whole point of the Department of Justice is to put things in writing. And the fact that they don't want to put in writing what Todd Blanche has said before Congress. One, this deal is dead. We have no more weaponization fund. Nobody can claim any money from it. The fact they don't want to put that in writing tells me Donald Trump still wants to play with that idea, or wants to offer it, or wants to tease it. And that's what senior administration officials have been saying to us. Two, why doesn't he want to put in writing and answer Cornyn and Tillis's questions about paring down the incredibly broad immunity that a federal judge has already questioned the legality of as part of this settlement? Why doesn't he want to put in writing paring it down? Because Donald Trump is obsessed, and has been in the 10 years I've been covering him too, with ensuring that the evidence that investigators have already gathered of what they have described as a 20-year conspiracy to defraud the IRS and to downplay his ultimate liability does not rise back and bite him or members of his family.
Mary, your name was evoked, so I want to go to you next. I think one of the things that is easy to get lost in all of this is the extent to which DOJ is coordinating with the executive. Talk to us about how unusual that is. And then I'm going to ask you to be the one to talk us through the timeline of what it could look like, how long Todd Blanche could actually serve as acting AG.
Yeah, so Carol's right. I mean, DOJ, of course, when I was there, we put everything in writing. It's a bunch of lawyers, right? No other place has that many lawyers in one place. And what do lawyers do? They put things in writing. And I think it's notable also the line of questioning from Senator Cornyn and others during the confirmation hearing that talked about, isn't this settlement agreement a binding agreement, right? And that would mean, and Todd Blanche had to admit, well, yes, it is. So that would mean that a party, say the plaintiff, Donald Trump Jr., his other kids, his organization, could sue for a breach of that settlement agreement if, they say, where is this fund that was supposed to be created? Now I'm being investigated, for an IRS audit, right? Like there could be litigation over that. So you've got to wonder, is part of the not changing this in writing in order to keep an agreement out there that would provide a basis at some future point for Donald Trump to actually sue, to actually have that agreement be enforced. Now, this is in front of a judge who's already said the settlement was a collusive scam, right? Because of the coordination between the Department of Justice and and the president, who himself was on both sides of the case. So I'm not sure that a breach of settlement agreement would go very far in front of this judge, but it has to be, it's something we have to consider, because what is the reluctance here to put things in writing? And to your question about how long could Todd Blanche serve, a long time. I mean, for starters, 210 days. But when a nomination is rejected or pulled, that restarts the clock, and another acting appointment can go for 210 more days. Besides that, he is somebody who has been Senate confirmed before, so there are additional rules that apply. So the bottom line is a very, very long time.
Ali Vitale, I'm told you have an update for us from Senator Cornyn.
Well, in response to the Trump Truth Social post that we started talking about, where Trump is hanging this squarely on Tillis and Cornyn, Cornyn responded on X in just the last few minutes saying POTUS is mistaken if he believes concerns about the provisions in his tax lawsuit settlement are limited to me and Senator Tillis. And I think what's notable about this is that we talk about Tillis and Cornyn, and to a slightly lesser extent, Bill Cassidy and others who are part of this. We call them the YOLO caucus. You only live once. But really, I think lately it's been you only leverage once. They've ultimately gotten to yes, but they've extracted some things that they want out of whatever the negotiation at hand has been. These are the folks that aren't coming back. And so I think it's important for us, as we talk about not just Blanche, but why they might not have the votes on the so-called SAVE Act, that these are the folks that are out front kind of taking the political arrows because they're not coming back. Their political calculus is different, but they might be doing that on behalf of other quieter members in more difficult races than they have, that have their own reservations but can't be as vocal about it because of politics back home.